70% of all gold production in the U.S. comes from a single state, Nevada. Conventional wisdom says that all the good deposits have been found. But one geologist who's discovered more than 30 million ounces of gold says he knows where to find Nevada's missing gold. And right now, he may be on the verge of being proven right. Investors and speculators can learn more at futuremoneytrends.com/gold. Greetings and thank you for joining us at futuremoneytrends.com. I feel privileged today. The big Brexit vote had just happened. A lot of people have it on their minds right now and they're very concerned. A lot of people buying gold, selling stocks. And we're here with legendary investor and speculator Rick Rule of Sprott Global. Rick, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Rick, before we get into the interview, I do want to alert anyone listening to this, they have the opportunity to meet you, see the investments that you approve of in Vancouver in just a few short weeks here. If you can tell us about the Sprott conference.
We would love to have your listeners and readers come see us. We are the sponsors of the Vancouver Natural Resource Investment Symposium. It's a conference that's gone on for 25 years now in Vancouver, British Columbia. Since Sprott has taken over the conference, we've made a couple of changes. One, the caliber of the speaker in terms of what we're doing is probably unrivaled. People like Jim Rickards, who is one of the best known names in precious metals today, Doug Casey, but also the CEOs of major mining companies. Importantly, as you suggested, in most investment conferences, the exhibitors are regarded by the conference sponsors as advertisers. So the selection criterion, for exhibitors is basically a pulse and a check that cashes, often in reverse order. Our attendees over the years have told us that they consider the exhibitors to be content too, that they come looking for investment opportunities. And the consequence of that is that at the Sprott conference, we have to own in performance-based products, every exhibitor that exhibits. Now, that doesn't mean that every stock will do well, but it does mean that we know the companies well enough that we have invested our own money for our own purposes in them, which is something that the attendees have told us year after year after year that they really appreciate.
I can imagine an index for everybody who got invited last year, and what they're worth this year must be quite shocking to a lot of people. The mining stocks have rallied, and I imagine the high quality picks you guys have. It's a real opportunity for investors to go meet the very CEOs that you've already fully vetted. Rick, Brexit, what does it mean for the monetary system going forward?
Well, I think it means a few things. In the intermediate term, and by intermediate I mean probably 3 months, extraordinary volatility in bond markets, equity markets, currency markets, maybe even commodity markets. Remember that volatility isn't the same as risk, but there is going to be breathtaking volatility. I think it also means in every major currency in the world, certainly no interest rate rises for the balance of 2016. All of the central bankers have all said that they will do whatever it takes, add whatever kind of liquidity is necessary, enter into whatever kind of long-short swaps are required to stabilize the demand for liquidity among major financial institutions, which is a long-winded way of saying that there's going to be lots of easy money around. The consequence of that is for natural resource investors, I think, continued strength in the precious metals markets. And after a period of ugly volatility, which I think we'll see pretty quickly, continued strength in precious metals markets. Your readers and listeners need to be aware that the short-term volatility might not be all up. It's important to recognize that gold stocks are stocks. And when the general equities markets sell off, sometimes the gold stocks sell off too. I'm not suggesting, by the way, to get out of the way. I'm just suggesting that you need to stomach some volatility. The outlook for precious metals, I think, is quite good as a consequence of low interest rates and uncertainty. And ultimately, higher gold prices are, of course, good for gold stocks because they're good for producers' margins. But I think that the next 30 to 45 days could be unnerving for everybody, ourselves included.
Rick, the past 40 years of investing in and seeing bear markets and bull markets, is the start of this bull market, this gold bull market and junior resource bull market, is there anything that you can note to us that might be something that you've noticed that maybe other participants aren't, something that is unique about this one?
I think there's a couple interesting things about this, and maybe it speaks more to my personality than to the market. But on the junior side, I think that the length and severity of the bear market will mean that the bull market recovery will continue to be sharper and more spectacular than people believe. It wasn't that long ago, but people need to remember that the TSXV fell by 90%. That means it fell by half, and then it fell by half again. And then, for good measure, it fell by half a third time. A market that's fallen by 90%, that is then up 100%, is a market that's only fallen by 80%. I think you get my drift. Mm-hmm. The second thing is that in the next little while, the resource equity market is going to be bifurcated between precious metals that will do, I think, relatively well, and industrial materials, soft commodities, and energy, which I think could continue to do poorly. They will, by they, I mean the non-precious metals resources, be negatively impacted if the volatility that we see in capital markets spills over to the general economy and constrains demand for industrial materials. Now, make no mistake, we are in the supply destruction phase, which you and I have talked about in earlier interviews. And that supply destruction phase will absolutely, without a doubt, generate a rip-roaring bull market at some point in time in the future. But in the near term, if the volatility that we see in capital markets spills over to the general economy, which it easily could, I think the impact of that will be that non-precious metals resource markets will continue to suffer as demand falters.
Rick, last week the Federal Reserve delayed again, even though they said 4 hikes were coming over the next year to 15 months. My question is the United States new normal Japan's current normal?
I don't know the answer to that. I really, truly don't. I suspect that the U.S. economy is much more vibrant in some ways. It's more of an innovation economy. It's an economy that generates more margin for unit of economic output than the Japanese economy does. And the U.S. is, in a demographic sense, a better population, younger, more immigrants. So I think there are big qualitative differences between the United States and Japan in the United States' favor. Now, I think that the deep state in the United States is probably less pervasive than it is in Japan. In other words, ours is less of a command and control economy. But I think, unfortunately, in the United States, our citizens want our government to repeat the mistakes that the Japanese government is making. So despite the fact that we have substantial systemic advantages over Japan, we may be as stupid in a policy sense as they are. I'm not a political analyst, so it's difficult for me to really comment.
Brexit, just to get back to it real quick, do you think this is the end or the beginning of the end of the euro currency itself? And if it is, I have to imagine that'll be really bullish for the dollar.
I don't think it is the end of the euro currency. I think that there will continue to be struggles in Europe, but the euro is a very large, very liquid, and very dense market. It's worthy to note that the exit of Britain doesn't per se impact the euro because Britain never joined the euro to begin with. Will this lead to more centrifugal pull in the euro region? In other words, as a consequence of the British vote to exit, will the Eurozone begin to disintegrate on the periphery? I think that's a good question, but I think in the in the near term, the answer to that is no. I think that if you saw the sovereigns which are most inclined to exit the European community because they don't like it's put on them by the center, their borrowing costs would rise so dramatically if they left the euro that it's unlikely that they'll do that.
Last question. I want to talk to you about California, Rick. I'm a California native, so are you. And I left that state. I'm now in Texas, which I hope one day there's the hashtag sign followed by Texit. And anyway, you know, when I see the Donald Trump rallies from the Northern California to Southern California, and I see basically just violent protesters burning, you know, U.S. flags, flying flags of another country. And then everything I know about California from the people I left, you know, the struggles the middle class has there, and the fact that it's 11% of the population but has over 34% of the welfare recipients. I got to tell you, Rick, is California is it turning into a third world hellhole?
Oh, I like it. I'm likely to leave California in the next 2 or 3 years to move to the state of Washington, but not because I don't like California or because Washington weather is better than California. The consequence of my employment with Sprott is to be closer to Vancouver and Calgary. The truth is that California is many things. It's the most innovative economy in the world. It has one of the lowest median age populations of any state in the union. It's also the most ludicrously overgoverned, or one of the most ludicrously overgoverned places on the planet. The social disturbance that you talk about and the flags that you're talking about, I think probably have to do with Hispanic immigrants. And having grown up in California, one of the things that attracts me to California is the prevalence of the Hispanic culture and access to the Hispanic culture. When immigrants come to this country, by and large, there are the best people from the country that they were leaving, and they become the best people in the countries that they were going to. And Mexican workers are no exception. What we do to them when we get them here is very different. We teach them, like we teach Caucasian people and black people and yellow people, we teach them a culture of dependency and entitlement. So if we have a problem in California, it's a problem of our own creation.
That's a great point. You know, it goes to, I seriously doubt you would endorse any kind of American exceptionalism, but I've always looked at the DNA of everybody, you know, the nation, of course, built on immigrants from many different regions. That the DNA of an immigrant is exceptional because they're pioneers, correct?
My grandfather came to the United States from northern Italy as an illegal immigrant, except for it wasn't illegal then. Many people don't know this, but the origin of the pejorative term for Italians, WAP, means without papers. My grandfather came without papers. It worked well for him. It worked well for us, and it worked well for the United States, too.
So, for the most part, in your opinion, it's actually not so much. It's obviously not the immigrants. It's the society. It's the welfare. It's the it's the idea
right.
of the state.
It's the residents. That's right.
All right. Well, certainly exciting times here, Rick. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Look forward to seeing you at your show in just 4 or 5 weeks here. And anyone who's interested, where's the best place for them to go to register?
I think the best place is, well, I'll tell you what we'll do is we'll forward you a link for your website, which you can use to accompany this talk. But if you come to our own website, www.sprottglobal.com, we'll certainly make information available to you.
Looking forward to it, Rick. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, sir.